live cast from the Common Mansplaining channel. I have no idea what I'm doing, so don't go too hard on us. But yeah, and give us some feedback. Let us know what we should do better, what we should do worse. I was told that we're supposed to do it in this vertical format so that people can watch us vertically, but that may not be the case. Let me know what you think at home.
Yeah, hopefully you can hear us. We're not wearing. I'll try to speak up a little bit because we're not wearing microphones.
Right.
So again, sound quality or how we're coming through is something we want to know. But we want to comment about a few things that are on our mind, and if you're out there, maybe interact with you live. So a lot of stuff going on. For the common man has had a chance to take in and digest. And what do you think has been the most interesting development this week, Eddie?
That's a good question. I think probably the biggest thing for me, because I'm in America, is the LA fires.
Yeah.
Probably. Now, I know you're big into Tommy Robinson, but...
no, well, let's talk about the LA fires.
Yeah, let's start there. So, I don't know too much about it, but I know that Trump has been railing about this for like a decade, almost. Like, he's basically... So, here's how I understand it. Apparently, there's this natural flow of fresh water that would go into the LA area, but it doesn't because they're worried about this fish called a smelt. And apparently, like, this fish is essentially irrelevant to basically all ecosystems, but it's a cool looking fish, right? And so
it's slightly larger than a minnow. It's a bait fish.
Right. And because
freshwater bait fish.
Because we have minnows, we don't need a smelt, but let's say we do.
It's only in these California river systems.
Right, it's only in California, and so they have canaled it off into the Pacific Ocean instead of letting all that fresh water just like zoom on into the LA zone, which would do a couple of things. Number one, it would make that area more lush and fertile. It would make it moister, so it would be more difficult for the ground, for fires like this to spread, because there would just be more moisture overall, and there would be more water to fight such a fire in the infrastructure should we need it. Like right now, I think they're out of water to fight this fire at the moment. I mean, I know they're bringing it from other areas and stuff.
Yeah, yes and no. One of the big problems, so I grew up in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
I've been through these fires. I grew up in a little city called Whittier that had a canyon that would catch on fire at least twice in my memory when I lived there. And it is surreal. It is unbelievably surreal. Like, you see it first, but then like this fog sets down and the sun is like darkened. Like it's cinematic in a way. And when I lived in Orange County shortly before moving here, there were fires that were inland, but the phenomenon that happens, what they're happening normally, is that wind blows off the desert,
right,
towards the ocean. That's a switch. Normally, water blows off the ocean, which is moist air coming off the ocean, and so that moist air keeps forest fires down. But forest fire season changes when the winds turn. They come off the desert. So now you're getting this air that's got no moisture in it. It is as dry as a bone. It is coming right from the north, from Elko, Nevada, all the way down to Los Angeles, and it hasn't breathed water. And they're having 9,900 mile an hour winds. I don't know if you saw trucks being blown over.
That's insane.
Any truck that didn't have cargo in its bay, like a deadhead truck, would be blown over. And so there were hundreds of semis just blown over, and other trucks, what they found, even if they felt like they had cargo, were pulling off to the side of the road and parking right against walls, so if they got tipped over, the wall would keep them from falling completely over, or protect or windbreak. So frankly, when the winds get that high, what happens is you can't dump water from airplanes.
Right.
Which is really most of their firefighting strategy.
Right.
For good or for ill. I mean, people being on the ground, when it's that high, being on the ground is the only way to actually, get the water to the ground when it's this windy.
Right.
But they don't. That's not something that they've put effort into, except for fire hydrants in neighborhoods. But to be able to fight open spaces. Anyway, but the smelt. There's less water. They could have these. One of the big things why Trump has said is that California should have invested in at least one desalinization plant.
Okay.
Right, because they're next to the Pacific Ocean,
Right.
so that to alleviate some of their water, it's just desalinization plants to burn a lot of fossil fuels.
Right. Right.
And being that the Sierra Club of the Green political powers are so powerful in California, you can't. People, the rest of the world, the rest of the country can't appreciate how much power they feel, because they kind of keep quiet. They're not high profile, but oh my gosh, like nobody. Anyway, you walk around on eggshells.
Just behind the scenes. So the other thing too that Trump is talking about too is that Gavin Newsom doesn't ever really take good care of his forestry, right? Like doesn't clean deadwood away, doesn't clean all the.
This is right. So maybe he's not, but there's been some attempts to do that, and it gets blocked by lawsuits by the Sierra Club. That's what I'm telling you.
Yeah, those political
even if liberals like want to do some moderate kind of stuff, they can face. Right, California is famous for being full of lawyers. They will face, oh, you didn't do all your paperwork, and they can delay. So let's say Gavin Newsom said right after Trump came out 4 years ago,
right,
to do some forestry thing, and he put it in there. They can delay it 3, 4, 5 years, that kind of process with the Sierra Club, and that's what they'll do.
But what would be the reason to do that?
Because they disagree. They feel like they want the stuff to naturally decay and the forestry cleaning out. The green, the environmentalists. The Sierra Club is one of the politically active, very strong environmental groups and they're really just concerned about California as natural spaces.
Well, sure. I mean, to be fair, this is an area that I am not well studied in. So is there an advantage to just letting?
Well, all right. So in the redwood forest, so they're different kind of forests, right? And people have seen pictures of the sequoias of redwoods. So redwoods have a bark that's fireproof.
Nice.
If you've ever seen redwood bark, it's extremely dusty and dirty, but the wood itself is fire resistant. The bark is very fire resistant, and sequoias are in the same family. They're immune to fire. Well, strongly not immune, but they're strongly resistant to fire. So what they found was when there were fires around the sequoias and the redwoods, they put them out. That was bad for the redwoods. What they need to do is let them burn. It clears out the undergrowth, and then the redwoods come back. And if you put them out, then you get all these other trees, and the redwoods and sequoias don't come up because they will live through the fires. So it was very pioneering 20th century,
pioneering.
Yeah, pioneering. For them to allow burning in redwood forests and sequoia forests, right? They're like, it's a good thing, and to let trees fall and let them decay through animals and stuff, right? But the problem is, what's good for redwood forests and sequoia forests is not necessarily good for pine forests. Pine trees fall, right? Pine burns like gasoline, right? And especially any type of wind. And
heavy smoke.
Yes.
Super heavy
Paradise is in Northern California, and right. So anyway, there was, obviously, I think if the governor, if the Democrats were really serious about it, they might push, but they put in some paperwork to do some forestry management stuff like Trump's suggestion, and were hit with lawsuits.
Right.
And since there's such a funding backbone of the Democratic Party, things like that, they're not going to fight them.
Right, of course.
Quite as earnestly.
Now, I just want to say, we got a chat from Rip Jaden in here that says that they're in Cali right now.
Yeah.
So I'm just hoping it doesn't reach anybody who's watching. If you're in Cali, make sure that your safety is of paramount importance. Don't worry about all of your stuff. I know, you won't want to lose all of your, I know you don't want to lose your property, your memorabilia, anything that, is a part of your heritage. But your life is the most important thing. So don't make a poor decision just because you're trying to hold on to something that.
But definitely, and the bigger thing that the Sierra Club will fight too is controlled burns.
Okay.
Right. So out here in the East Coast, they do controlled burns all the time, which are decidedly undramatic because there's so much rain, there's so much moisture. We could go out here. I've got a ravine full of pine trees out here, and I would set off fireworks right now, and the police would come and set them off with me because the ground is so wet. There's so little risk of it starting any
And
type of.
that explains why the crime rate is so high in this area.
Yeah.
Okay.
but it's so different out in California where it's so dry.
Right.
That they and when this wind change. But yeah, it's scary, and normally the hedge against wildfires was developments.
Right.
Houses and then trees and landscaping with water in it was sort of a natural fire break.
Right.
Right? And that now one of the things too, right, with the smelt, getting back to Eddie's earlier point about water and the smelt, is they want less water for irrigation of yards, right? And here in North Carolina, we don't have to water it rain so much, but out there, you've got to water if you want to have a lush backyard for the most part. And that's a natural fire break. Otherwise, it becomes, but they've pushed a big thing to have drier landscapes, use natural stuff, use less irrigation for your landscapes. So now backyards are not as much of a fire break and more of a fire continuer.
Right.
And so it hit Pacific Palisades, which should have been very defensible, and just burned that sucker down. Scary.
And to compound all of these issues is like 4 years of defund the police, 4 years of like oh man, didn't the fire department's budget get tanked like $20 million just the other?
Los Angeles County did cut, and the fire department. Well, if you want a spicy take,
Yeah, hit me.
Fire department chief,
Mm-hmm.
deputy chief, and another person in charge of training.
Yeah.
All women.
Yeah, I saw it. I did, and no, I didn't think anything of it at the time. But I saw one person appear on like some news channel like giving updates, and another person. And I'm like, where's all the guys? I mean, not that you're not the
80% of firefighting or more, and it should be more, are men.
Right, and for decent reason. I mean, not saying that a woman can't do the administrative part of the job just as well, maybe even better, right? Like, but if you're talking about the sheer ability to go into a building and pick up somebody who's like
an adult,
an adult who's maybe in trouble and get them out. You're talking about the ability to like maintain pounds of pressure as you're holding this huge like faucet, this huge nozzle. Like, I'm sorry, but it
is physical work, and. Yeah,
that's stuff that, and I've been an athlete my whole life, and that's a job that I would find it very difficult to do. Like that's not easy stuff. Those guys are, and if you see those guys that like actually go into the building, those guys are iron. They're like they're pounds of steel. That's it. Just massive, like huge manly men, and Karen Bass isn't even in the city when it strikes. Like she's nowhere to be found. Maybe not even in the continent.
Right, and because who's appointing these positions it's political connections, not necessarily firefighting know-how or skill, and it's because women haven't held this job in the past. Well, we're going to have the first women ever, the first all women.
Congratulations! You're going to have the first fire hazard that's worse than anybody else's.
Right,
congrats, and they have. I think this is now officially the worst. Fire that LA's ever seen.
Yeah, I mean, it's burning down Malibu. I mean, these are places like PCH should be a fire break. It's a very broad thing. The houses are on the coast are laid very little vegetation. They're almost right. When you have a house right on the coast, you develop every square inch of that, and it's usually hardscaped most of it. And for that to still be burning down is, gosh,
I saw a terrible meme the other day about Malibu Barbie, and she was all like torched up and stuff. I was like, no, don't do that.
Right.
So that's the fires of LA, and guys, I just want to say that my heart and my prayers go out to you. I made a short saying the very same. I still mean it. If you guys need assistance with anything, just let us know here in the chat. We'll try to make something happen. I would be honored to assist by getting somebody a case of water or something to help. Yeah. I know drinking water is not easy to come by at the moment. I know that people are going to need places to stay, because everyone's getting dehoused. But
come out east where we got plenty of water.
Plenty of water, plenty of no. I haven't really had a forest fire issue down here ever, really, that I can know of. But so. What's your pet peeve topic of the?
Oh no, I want to say one last thing before we leave fires. What was I going to say? Well, all right. Why this is so infuriating and why there's so many memes is it's a basic tenet of an expectation we have of our government. Why we come together, why we're willing to pay taxes, is to have somebody put out a fire that threatens our home, right?
This is one of the very few things that governments are supposed to do.
Right, that the government's going to do that we can't really do for ourselves as well. Right? I mean, so I knew one guy who he backed up to, this is in Southern California, and his house backed up to a ravine with eucalyptus trees in it. So eucalyptus trees, not native to America, they're from Australia, and they're full of oil. When they catch on fire, they explode and launch oil bombs. It's the most unbelievable thing. If there's YouTube videos out there, watch it. Will launch, you burn a eucalyptus tree, and then it just explodes with oil, and it shoots these flaming balls. So the fire department, if a eucalyptus tree catches on fire, won't try to put it out. They'll just try to evacuate people. They're not going to try to save structures. And they told him that. They told him that. So he got his own connection. He connected the fire hydrant so that he could fight the fire himself because he knew the fire department wouldn't come to save his structure. And that's like, when we talk about paying taxes, this is, public safety. Now, policing is a fairly new idea, but firefighting is, right?
Oldest time.
Firefighting will destroy civilizations. Bad firefighting. And so this is what, I think people are feeling like Los Angeles should be one of the highest, most elevated cultures and government, seeing their wealth, their prestige, where they've come, and they can't protect
their basic citizens.
They can't protect millionaires. There was a clip I shot of a $35 million mansion.
Oh yeah, Paris Hilton lost her house.
Yeah.
Like Paris Hilton lost her house. I mean, that's like an icon, right? And you can't even. Yeah, that's rough. That's rough.
You need some way to use the pool water to fight fire yourself or something.
That's like I said. That's one of the very few things that governments are supposed to do. Like one of the very few. In these days of abundance, right? We are constantly pressuring the government to do all of these things that isn't technically on their job description, right? Because we think, well, we've got all this other stuff. Why don't we, make them do all these things that aren't, it's not part of the Constitution. It's not part of the city ordinance. It's not part of any of it, right? And yet we're like, let's just make the government do it. Moreover, let's make the government take money from other citizens in order to do it. And meanwhile, when the time comes for a basic fundamental duty of government to take place, they fall apart.
Well, and it speaks of hubris. It's like, because our firefighters have been so professional and so good at putting stuff out that we kind of take it for granted.
Yeah.
Feel like we can cut them. That, maybe we don't have to necessarily hire the most qualified applicants. We can downgrade that. We can take it, rather than a serious job that's providing essential services to our community, we can make it a way to, as a jobs thing where we're just giving money out to preferred groups. And, and that decline, you can get away with that for a while, but this is just catching up with it.
Paul Bunyan said he's seen me at Walmart. Well, I must have one of those faces,
Yeah.
I must.
All right, so my other pet peeve.
Yeah.
The other thing is to do, I don't know, pet peeve, but I don't know how many of you have been following the UK crisis, but political crisis, but the United Kingdom, Britain, what it's exposed really is just how much in decline they are, and how stark it is to live in a country that does not have strong historical First Amendment protections, constitutional protections.
Yeah.
Freedom of speech, and what it has led to, and what unchecked immigration with nobody questioning, saying that any immigration is a unfettered good, rather than questioning, the levels and the nature of the immigrants at all, where it leads. And the UK is in a crisis right now. And finally, with Elon Musk and some others have raised some of the topics. One of the unfortunately worst consequences of this is that children, girls, have been sexually abused.
Yep.
And it was something that was swept under the rug for political reasons. And there's a reckoning going on. But really what they're facing too, the whole thing is the British people are being arrested for speech, for criticizing a group of immigrants. And
Yep.
I don't know, this was maybe a topic that I've known about for a little bit, but the mainstream media, especially in America, has had zero interest in covering it.
Yeah.
And so now all the mainstream papers in Britain and even in the US are now covering it because they had a huge debate about it in Parliament yesterday.
Yep.
And even though it's not going exactly the way they want it, they can't ignore it anymore or pretend that it doesn't matter to people.
I have to say, thank God for people like Elon Musk, who, and I'll be the first to tell you that he overextends his reach sometimes.
Oh, nobody's perfect.
But I mean, I guess that's if there's anything that the richest man on earth is gonna do, it's probably going to be to overextend.
Overextend.
Right. That's just how it is. But I'll tell you what, if it wasn't for him, punching out like a little, like free Tommy Robinson or just, sticking his nose in a little bit. This whole thing may have just like kind of, it'd be impossible to sweep it under the rug at this point, but they would have definitely tried every little piece of curtailing they could have done. And thank God, that people are sticking their noses into the thing. Thank God people like Tommy Robinson are out there being vocal about it all the time.
Well, I think with Tommy Robinson, and really the question they're asking now is not only do they want to look into do a full inquiry of what was done in the past, and especially if it was done suppressed because of politics. That's what Labor does not want.
No, of course.
They do not want those questions answered. But what Tommy is interested in is preventing this going forward in the future.
Right.
And that's going to entail a lot more heavy vetting or decline in the type of immigrants that are allowed to come to the United Kingdom.
Yeah.
Because by importing vast numbers of, especially I think the problem is Pakistanis that are not interested in integrating
right.
And adopting British systems, are bringing a culture that is frankly clashes, and this is just an evidence of that clash. And then nobody wants to address that it's a negative clash.
Right.
Because Labor and conservatives, upper class English people, are terrified of being called racist.
Yeah.
Right? You can manipulate them so easily.
They're very proper.
They want to think that they're above that they're so elevated. And this is only something the lower classes create because the lower classes are competing with new immigrants. And so racism is only found in the lower classes. Tommy Robinson is lower class. That's why nobody wants to take him seriously. But, hopefully with this, they'll see it's more than just a lower class issue. And it's a thing for Britain's future.
Yeah, my thing is this. And now it's a thin line between, saying that, a culture or a race doesn't belong in a community and being a racist, right? And don't get me wrong, like I understand and I respect that thin line, right? And while I fall firmly on the side of like I'm very easy to denote as not a racist, and Tommy Robinson probably isn't so easily denotable as such, right? And he's having some struggles, but even without that, like I think you could just strip the conversation of its racial aspect entirely. Like you could just take the racial terrain away 100%, and you could just look at the cultures, and you could see that you've got a culture that has a certain number of laws that have worked for millennia, right? You've got a culture that has a certain general religious affiliation. You have a culture that is general cultural affiliations, and then all that is what it is. And of course, diversity is usually going to be a good thing when in moderation. But if you come in and you're thoroughly different on every single aspect of that culture, if you're just 100% different, then there's gonna be some culture shock, and then
Yeah.
there's only a certain amount that any culture can take. Like if where is like Springfield, right? Like had what 20,000 immigrants brought in overnight,
Yeah.
basically, like that was only a 50,000 population place, right?
Yeah.
It's only so many people you can put in there
You gotta
before
learn
it's
so
not
fast.
Springfield anymore, right?
Yeah, and part of the thing is when so I grew up in Los Angeles, right? I've told you this. And
Very
so,
sorry to
yeah,
hear
so
that.
there's lots of immigrants from all over the world, lots of populations, and they would come in and they were happy to be there, and they would try to integrate. I knew I had a really good friend of mine from Romania, and gosh, he loved America so much.
Yeah, that.
Mike Varshag. But when you can live in essentially ghettos, you can live in communities where all the people are just recent immigrants, right? Which is what has happened in a lot of parts of London. And then they don't integrate. They don't even slowly over time adopt. They come over and try to live exactly like they lived in Pakistan,
Yeah, they didn't even try,
which
right.
was a place that they wanted to leave. And there needs to be, and that's the type of thing. It's like when immigrants come here, and that we've had good experiences, is when they really want to live the culture that they're moving to.
Absolutely.
And that's why they value it. But they come here and then they don't. They clash and they rebel against it.
Yeah, see, this is all right. Here's a quick anecdote for those of you who are nobody's there at the moment, but
Yeah, that's fine.
but for those of you who might
Watch
pop into
this
this,
later.
right, who might pop into this. So I used to manage stores. I used to manage convenience stores. Later, I used to manage pawn shops. And every time you take over a new pawn shop, a new convenience store, right, there's always a little bit of culture shock, right? New managers in town, a new culture is being implemented, and really 9 times out of 10 it's the old culture. I'm just doing it better, right? Because somebody's gotten fired. 9 times out of 10 someone got fired, and they move the new manager in to actually uphold the rules and regulations of the company. So I'll move in and I'll start implementing the rules and like all of a sudden people have to show up to work on time. Oh no, how terrible, right?
Yeah.
All
I'm
of a sudden,
not an on-time guy. I like to have some wiggle room.
You know, it is what it is. And like, there's part of this is management, right? So
Yeah,
for someone
but,
like
yeah.
him, I might just start telling him, like, listen, I need you to come in at 6, when in reality I expect you to be there at 7.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, I hide the schedule from you. The
Yeah,
schedule
yeah,
says
yeah,
7,
yeah.
you know, but like, then you show up on time, and everyone's happy for it. But the point is, now a new manager's here, and this is the one thing that I would hear no matter what store I would take over. They would say, but the last manager we had didn't do it like that. And I'm like, well, that's why his ass got fired. That's why it didn't work out. So if you are coming from a culture, to map this back onto the conversation that we were talking about before, if you're coming from a culture that has failed so utterly as to literally have you running in terror from that culture to a new place that doesn't have those problems, then at least consider the possibility that the new culture is doing something better or more efficiently than what you've been working with. And so maybe you should leave what you had behind and engage in the new culture's strengths. Now, I'm not saying to leave everything. I'm not saying that, you stop dressing the way that you dressed or whatever. Take the good parts of your culture with you, but like, don't expect that everything should be the same, especially if you're going to be molesting people.
Well, and here's the thing. Yeah, usually when there's clashes, then the criminal justice system comes in and tells people, like, no, this is wrong.
Right.
We consider this a crime, and you're going to face consequences for that. And then they have to decide, like, oh, okay, now they take this seriously if they're going to rebel and continue committing crimes. What happened in this grooming gangs as Rotherham is that they weren't charged. They were so scared of being called racist that they didn't charge these perpetrators, and so there wasn't even that signal like, oh, this isn't tolerated here.
Right.
We can't do it. They said, oh, they just need us to keep this a little more low key or not right. So the arrests are important because it sends that, especially, and publicized and talked about it in the media, sends a message to everybody, hey, this isn't tolerated here. This might have been something that was allowed back where you came from in Pakistan.
Right.
But here, it will get you in jail and it will shame everybody in your community.
And once again, this is one of the very few places where a government is truly needed It is where you have to
A core.
defend and protect the citizenry from threats, both foreign and domestic. It's part of the oath that I took when I was in the military, right? This is one of the very few places that a government is absolutely essential, and when we need them,
Don't drop the ball.
Right? Exactly.
Well, we want a refund on our taxes.
Yeah, no kidding. Right? That's how I feel. And it's funny because people, right? Your wife was mentioning about the Piers Morgan Tim Pool cast. It's
Exchange,
they talk about Tommy Robinson like he's just some hooligan, but in the truth of the matter is he's been the opponent of this far too proper to actually even report crimes government for going on decades now. And I'm like, can you imagine the type of fortitude that you'd have to push through a government that doesn't even want to report this type of crime? Like, that's outrageous. I would be losing my mind. I would have what Tommy Robinson's done is like timid compared to. I would have torn the pillars of the civilization to its knees.
Well, see, in America, we're not to this point yet, which is why it's so shocking, because we think so. Britain is so much like us, or maybe even with their fun hoity-toity accents, maybe a little bit even more advanced than us, but they're not.
They've been in decline,
especially from the left. Right, and this is a Labor Party issue, a left party, and something that they have exerted cultural dominance over, and being able to cow the conservatives into ignoring by threatening them, by calling them racist. But they're finally, people are waking up to that, and they're not going to be. I think Donald Trump is a big part of that, because he's not intimidated about being called racist. I think that's one of his important superpowers.
I agree. Well, now I see every day in the news, I'll see somebody in Britain getting arrested for upsetting somebody with a meme online, or they get fined for some kind of post that they did on X or something. I'm like, come on. How long is it going to be until the UK realizes that freedom of speech is just absolutely essential to mankind?
Well, for anybody, any place where you vote on democracy, for constitutional to not have freedom of speech means you don't have free exchange of ideas.
Exactly. That's not a democracy then. That's not being able to criticize the government. That's not being able to criticize each other. I mean, that's just, we have to, one of the things that Jordan Peterson says that I think needs to be heard to all ends of the earth is it's not clear that thought and vocals are actually separate, right? It's not clear that you can actually separate the thoughts that go through your mind and the things that you would want to communicate, because that's essentially what you're doing to yourself all the time, is communicating. And those thoughts, I mean, if you stifle the voice, you're actually stifling the thoughts, right? It's like you're at that point where it's wrong think is now a crime, and you've crossed over the line. You're at that 1984 zone where people are all trapped and nobody can say anything, nobody can think anything. And if you even get to the point where you start to have a thought, then
and here's the thing: this is not a bug; it's a feature.
Yes.
Of the left and socialism. That's why 1984, and as co-opted, this is a playbook that is known by the Bolsheviks, who are a big part of the labor movement. The guy, Jeremy Corbyn, who lost his run for prime minister last time, was pretty nakedly open about his communism and Bolshevism and Marxism, and was rejected because of it. So the current leader, Keir Starmer, a little more attractive guy, kind of downplayed that, but really, it's still a core of their worldview.
It's the same thing.
Right.
Yeah. And I just can't get my mind around, how can anybody look at this situation and think, no, we don't need a national inquiry into, I can't.
Well, because it's going to be bad for them. It's naked self-interest. And everybody sees that. The only reason why you would oppose it is because it's going to expose your malfeasance.
Right.
Right?
Okay.
And so, and you want to distract by saying, no, we're trying to help the victims.
But isn't there a point?
Look at what we're doing here. don't look at the past because that's going to excoriate that I was doing and I was complicit.
Isn't there a point at which, the trying to think how to say that, like, isn't there a point at which assisting the citizenry now overcomes the potential dangers of bringing your own mistakes into, right? Like at some point that
Okay, yeah, I guess, yeah. Like, should we cry over spilled milk or should we fix the bridge?
Right, and there's a point at which fixing the bridge is so important that the spilled milk, even though it's obvious that you spilled it, right, becomes just kind of like in the background when you.
Yes, but I think a government as big and as sophisticated as Great Britain's can do both.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a choice, right? I mean, so yeah, if you had a small city and a huge bridge was knocked out by a storm, they might have to dedicate all of their resources and stuff to that, and might not be able to also simultaneously look into, all right, who designed this bridge poorly? Why were we allowed to build a bridge that was so susceptible to failure? Type of things like that. They'd have to wait until it doesn't have to be one of the other. If you're a big enough and wealthy enough country, you can do both.
Yeah.
Right? Because the people who are fixing the bridge aren't the same people that can look into and analyze the engineering. So the same thing in Great Britain, and it really is. I think he's only delaying the inevitable. Journalists are finally, because this is a big enough story, followed by pushed by the bully pulpit of Elon Musk. Journalists are going to start digging into and doing their own inquiry because they know if they write a story about it, people are going to watch.
Yep.
People are going to read it. People. This has the attention of the world, and you're going to get. I will tell any news story, any journalist operating in the UK right now, if you do the hard work of the journalist, the spotlight journalism, and expose this, and have the guts to report it when it implicates powerful people who want to maintain a certain political profile, you're going to have my attention.
Yeah, you'll have mine. Now keep in mind that be careful when you do it because they're going to come after you.
Oh, yeah.
There's no doubt. There's no doubt that's why they came after Tommy Robinson for all this time. I mean, there's no doubt that.
Well, yeah. So here's a little advice for you. Yeah. So when you publish that report, maybe get on a plane and publish it from
America
or Montreal
or Canada, right? Or Greenland. I hear we're about to have all those in there.
Right. So here's the big thing for everybody in the UK who wants to, who would love to have Americans' protections and rights.
Yep.
I had a good friend of mine in middle school whose family moved here from Stratford to Southern California simply because he had the declining culture and all of his friends were just drinking and all the time, and there wasn't the industriousness that he saw in America and faith. But it's really difficult to get a legal immigration status to move from the UK to the US. It's a lot harder than it should be. But the Commonwealth, going to Canada is much, much easier. So we recommend everybody
or become a canal worker in the Panama Canal.
Yeah. Everybody in the UK right now, get on that Canada train, and then when Canada becomes the 51st state, booyah, you get First Amendment protection. So, that's, I think, a good way to transfer to our next topic. Donald Trump. Right? The disruptor. He's not even president yet.
Yep.
He's trying to just get to January 20th, but everything's being disrupted.
It's funny too is everybody is already blaming Trump for what was it? Somebody said what was it? Bernie Sanders put a tweet out the other day that's basically telling Trump what he needs to do to fix the LA fire situation. I'm like, Trump's not the president yet, right? He's not in office yet, and but it's funny. It's funny how much blame he gets for things when he's not even president. It's funny how much everyone's already basically hanging on his coattail. You see the thing from Zuckerberg the other day where he said he's going to make Facebook a much free.
He's going to follow Musk's example.
Right, much
as
freer.
far as the moderation and things like that, it's going to be more of a free speech.
And everybody's already saying, well, that's just Zuckerberg trying to be on Trump's team now and try to.
But it's the right play. I mean, yes, there's going to be some bad speech, but as citizens, we have to be able to filter out that.
Absolutely.
Right? You can't just silence it. We have to be able to see the ugly. Right, there has to be an opposition, and then we have to say, all right, morally, what are we going to support? Where are we going to stand? And we have to be able to process that. You can't just silence it and say we're adults. We have to choose to be able to see the speech and we want to see.
Right. So Trump is now going to potentially end up with Canada, Greenland, and the Panama Canal.
And he's open to, right? So this is a new doctrine, Trump doctrine of expansionism. I would even call it new imperialism. Neo-imperialism. Before, but a new approach that for so long, the postmodernists after World War II, the idea of expanding territory was vilified. But here's a spicy take, right? If you can come in and join the United States, right? It's a state where we're not looking to exploit you. We're looking to make you citizens in the greatest country in the world.
Well, we're going to exploit you also.
Well, it's because for our benefit. We see a benefit there.
But mutual benefit.
But we're already providing basically military security for Panama.
Right.
Because it's so strategically important.
We're providing military security for all of them.
For Greenland.
And for all of Europe. And for all of, literally everyone on Earth, essentially.
Yeah. And so we would say, but the new expansionism is let these people vote.
Right.
Right. Trump would like the people in Greenland to vote, and Denmark's terrified of it because the word in the wind is that a majority of Greenlanders would rather be independent or be in the U.S. territory.
Oh my God, it's blowing me up. So what is the? I didn't get a chance to dig into so some people seem to think that Greenland is actually part of Denmark.
It is.
Some people. How certain are we of that? Because I've heard the contrary as well.
Well, there's different sort of classifications. So they're more than just a territory, but they're not as sovereign as actual land in European Denmark, right? And they have limited sovereignty, but essentially are dictated on by Denmark. Denmark does send them social welfare and some benefits, but essentially and dictates a lot of things to them. The word on the street is that the opinion of Greenlanders towards Denmark is not a good one. I mean, a lot of people, it's sort of like us. If you asked a poll of what's your approval rating of Congress, right, it's 20% or something. But you ask Greenlanders their opinion of their government in Denmark, not the local Greenland sort of government, it's very bad.
So, is Greenland to Denmark as Puerto Rico is to America? Is that what it's like? Or is it more or less what? Is it a Guam? Is it a...
It's probably more similar to Puerto Rico, with a little more similar to Puerto Rico, but I would, it used to be a lower status, but they've elevated it. But it's not exactly analogous, but it's closer.
I mean, well, fine. Well, why don't we just let Denmark keep it, and we'll just let Denmark defend themselves too. No more assistance with anything that Denmark runs into internationally. No more. We'll put our own tariffs back up like normal. See how Denmark likes to be held.
Well, right. So we like strategically we like Denmark because they sit at the edge of the Baltic, which polices a lot of Russia's fleet, which is why Russia will launch up into the Arctic to try to get around Denmark. They're a NATO ally, but yes, they have for years habitually underspent on defense because, especially in Greenland, because they know the U.S. will provide it.
They don't have to.
And Trump, as a disruptor, is like, let's question the status quo. Why are we doing this?
Right.
Let's just make it official. If we're the daddy, I'm their father. I'm the one who's providing for all these people. Let's just bring them in and give them citizenship, and we'll see what happens on that. But yeah, the new expansionism, that he's not shy or ashamed to expand the U.S. into Panama, into Greenland, into Canada, into Mexico, and wouldn't that be fun? I know they're all sovereign countries, so there'd have to be strong movements on their part to make that happen.
So
but
is
it'd be
Greenland
interesting.
a sovereign country of its own?
They have a limited sovereignty, but
so if they were to
technically under their thing, if they voted to leave Denmark by a simple majority, they would then become independent, and then they could vote again to become a territory or have affiliations with the United States.
All he has to do is offer them some money, right? Like a trade deal or something, and
yeah, we'll see. I think a lot of it comes down to the Greenlanders all feeling disrespected. And this is, I think, an understated part of Trump's appeal to, let's just say lower working class people that have been disrespected or ignored by elites. And that he speaks to them in a way that they don't feel inferior, right? And it means that his base is usually, described as a basket of deplorables or horrible people. And you're right, the snobbery of the left, who kind of took the votes of lower class people for granted, but have seen that they can just treat them like garbage, especially the African American community can count on their votes.
Right.
Trump is disrupting that, and he's spoken to them and seemed like, I think that's a big part of the resentment that the Greenlanders feel like Danes, especially if they'd ever go to Denmark, were treated so badly by Danes that they're of an opinion given a vote.
It's possible.
Right. So Denmark, I think, is going to try to prevent a vote.
That'd be interesting. Now, what can they do to prevent it?
It's politics, You do different things, and
just a counter offer, basically. That's it, right? But what do they have to offer? Like when matched against America, we can offer them security, wealth. Like what exactly does Denmark have to offer?
Yeah, a U.S. passport to Miami is. There's a lot of delicious Danishes.
Danishes, which they probably have anyway. They probably produce half of them.
So I'm being flipped. But yeah, and not that it's going to happen quickly, but that Trump is legitimately spurring these things is a tribute to his disruptor.
He's definitely a disruptor. I'll give him that. I still have my doubts about him, but
about his effectiveness,
about his politics,
his benefits,
about his politics.
Okay.
I'm not a now. For those of you who've been following this channel,
astute.
Well, it's not even that. No, for those of you who have been following this channel for a long time, know how I feel about Trump. My biggest problem with him is he's not very conservative. That's it. Like that, it could get no simpler than that. He's just not a conservative. He's a populist.
His policies.
Well, his politics is born out in his policies. Well, some of his policies are fine, actually.
I think his politics are drawing people to him and making and giving the power to exert his policies.
Ironically, his politics is. His policies are more conservative than his political ideology, which is kind of a weird thing. I don't know if that's a game he plays or if it's like he sneaks in under the cover of populism, and then after
the Republicans he put in place during his administration, why there was so much prosperity, was good, sound, conservative fiscal policy led to prosperity.
Some of it was good conservative fiscal policy. Some of it was there's no doubt about the fact that Trump spent more than basically every other president to this date.
Well,
he was not frugal.
Yeah, but if you don't, if you take out 2020, which was his last year, and it was the pandemic,
then he's still up there. He wouldn't be the top spender, but he's still up there. he's like I said, he's just not conservative. And don't get me wrong, that isn't like to say that all conservatives are great. All
the Times, yeah,
yeah,
you gotta govern the Times, but yeah, I think being a little more free market, freedom.
Free market is good, and he does have very free.
Ideas,
his free market policies are very, very strong. He's got good deregulatory policies,
but then he takes that where he's willing to use tariffs with informed policy.
We'll see,
and we'll see the impact of that.
We'll see. Right?
He's disruptive. He's at least talked about it. It seems like he's not scared of it.
Yeah,
and maybe that's good enough.
He uses it like a warning stick anytime someone crosses. Like, oh yeah, well I'll tariff you. It's like I'm a personal citizen, sir. Yeah, I'll tariff you anyway. But anyway,
right.
That's our first live session ever, guys. For those of you who are still watching, which is probably like one person I think at the moment, please subscribe, please like, please check us out at our homepage. But we hope you enjoy the first and only live show to this point. But we hope to have at least maybe one a week. Would be nice.
Yeah. You just remember this. You discovered Common Mansplaining before they became the huge juggernaut force of 2029.
You were a common man with us before it was cool, right? Like it's like, all right. I'll catch you guys next time on Common Mansplaining. All right. How do I stop this thing? I don't even know how to stop it.
See where the X is?
Yeah, X. Ah, look at that. That worked.